X-Ray Specs and Warrior in Woolworths, and you're listening to Radiosonic on CBC Radio 2. David Wisdom and Leora Kornfeld here at your service, and we're being joined tonight by Richie Unterberger, author of Unknown Legends of Rock. Now, X-Ray Specs, we just heard, best known, if you can say best known,
Unknown Legends of Rock and Roll.
And rock and roll,
Yeah.
That's right. Oh, Bondage Up Yours, which was a sort of, it was a, what would you call it, an underground sort of English or campus radio hit, but Polly Styrene from the band, she sort of went missing for a while, didn't she, Richie?
Yeah, and that was an interesting example of a misconception which was kind of cleared up by doing the book. I had read in the most recent reference book entry for X-Ray Specs that Polly had gotten religion and joined a cult-like Indian-type sect and hadn't been heard from since the early 1980s. I did know already that she had a mid-1990s solo album out, and, you know, she wasn't very hard to contact, and she was not ever, she didn't ever vanish into the Hare Krishnas, which was the rumor circulating around the
I
United
remember
States
that,
anyway.
yeah.
She said, I was involved in Indian religion very heavily, and I still am to an extent, but I never retired from the music business. And she said, in her view, what happened was the music business kind of retired from her. She couldn't get records out on big labels. And she was still making music and writing music throughout the 1980s and the early 1990s, but no records happened to have come out. The story that got out, though, was that she kind of gone crazy and it vanished into the world of religion, never to be seen again. Well, she's still out and around, and she still, as someone who interviewed her for an hour can testify, she still sounds quite sane. And I don't believe a record has come out since about 1995, which is when the X-Ray Specs Comeback album did come out, but she was still writing new material when I talked to her about a year and a half ago and was optimistic that she could start recording again.
Where does she live, Richie?
London.
Ah, okay.
Not exactly an exotic place.
No.
But not exactly in an inconspicuous place.
No, not at all. In fact, X-Ray Specs did reunite for some gigs, and it didn't go too well as she went through when she talked with me, and it even got to the point where the X-Ray Specs was going out with a different singer, which is kind of like, you know, sending the Rolling Stones out and recruiting, you know, some guy, some session vocalist to take Mick Jagger's place, so it was kind of a nasty business. So I'm not sure that she will be going out fronting X-Ray Specs or just as Polly Styrene if she decides to tour again, but she certainly wants to keep making music. That is undeniable.
Let's talk about a band I actually did get a chance to see a few years ago, must have been about
Was
18,
it a few?
18 years ago. The Young Marble Giants, who are a much quieter kind of musical unit from Wales, right?
That's right, from Cardiff. What interests me about them and some of the other bands that I picked, when you think of early punk bands, or at least when it's portrayed in a lot of the media, you tend to think of what you might call the 1, 2, 3, 4 bands that, you know, just come in and pile on the chords and play as fast as possible. And actually, punk music diversified very quickly within a year or so to bands like the Young Marble Giants and the Raincoats that weren't playing that kind of music at all, but it was more punk in attitude in that it was not at all like mainstream music, and the lyrics were very idiosyncratic. And the music approach was very idiosyncratic, but it wasn't especially loud or fast music. It was just very expressive music. And the Young Marble Giants, I thought, got a really interesting boxy sound that is not at all similar to the kind of sounds that became really popular in the 1980s, where the drum machine was a really prominent part of the rhythm track. It was a much subtler kind of sound where there was a lot of space. It was like almost like the guitars are being played through transistor radios, and the drum machines almost sound like toys, and that gives the music kind of a futuristic ambience, but also a much more intimate ambience than a lot of music from that time that was trying to rely on technology.
And they went on to other musical endeavors, the Moxham Brothers, a band called The Gist and other things, and the woman singer Alison Staton was in a band called Weekend for a while. Do you know, have you talked to them recently?
The only person I interviewed for that chapter was Stewart, actually. I thought he was the most crucial figure, particularly when it came to writing and arranging the songs. And Alison Staton has put out some periodic solo albums, but doesn't seem to be incredibly active. Philip Moxham, not extremely active either, at least as far as recording. And Stuart Moxham is recording some solo work. And the reception of the book has often focused on, like, the most tragic stories. And Young Marble Giants is an example of a story which seem to be heading in that direction, but actually prove that there are some happy endings. In the early 1990s, Stuart Moxham was in a very bad material state. He didn't have drug problems or mental illness problems, but it was at the point where he had to take what they call pay-to-play gigs in London just to play it all live, and he had no money coming in, and he was living on council housing there. But Hull recorded one of his songs, and also a French pop star recorded one of his songs. Not a Young Marble John song, actually, I don't think, but a Gist song. And with the royalties coming in, not only is he comfortable again, more importantly for him, he's able to make music again and record and put out records and buy new equipment.
Well, it's good to hear. There's so many sad stories. It's good to hear a happy one. And we are about to wind this up, Richie. We'd like to talk about just a little bit. You're working on a book that just really appeals to me, about regional music in the USA.
Yeah, this is scheduled for publication in about the middle of 1999, and it's for the Rough Guide series.
And you've already written a Rough Guide to Seattle, haven't you?
Right. That came out a few months ago. This is kind of like a chapter-by-chapter guide to the popular music of the United States, not only currently, but throughout history. So each chapter is kind of a look at the history of an individual city or state and kind of an essay about how each region's music has evolved over time.
Oh, I can't wait to read that one. And we'll talk to you when that comes out, too, I hope.
The book we've been talking about tonight is Richie Unterberger's Unknown Legends of Rock and Roll, Psychedelic Unknowns, Mad Geniuses, Punk Pioneers, Lo-Fi Mavericks, and more, and is available through Miller Freeman Books, based out of San Francisco. And before we go, I think we should end with something, I guess, that you categorize as post-punk Aisha Kandisha.
Right. There weren't many recent acts that I covered in the book because I was trying to focus on people who are not written about in the contemporary press. But I did write about a few what I thought were exceptionally interesting bands of the 1980s, or the late 1980s. This was probably the most interesting of those, in my view. They're a Moroccan group, and no one else, I think, has approached their blend, their collision of influences from the Third World, which Morocco is part of, and what I guess we would call the First World as far as rock and dub and reggae influences. It's a real mishmash, but unlike a lot of that music that comes out of Africa and some other places that's called world music, it doesn't sound like traditional music trying to become really pop so that people not from the Third World will buy it. It sounds more like they're using their own regional music as the base and incorporating what they want from more industrialized, more affluent societies' music, more pop music, and they're really tinkering around with it in a kind of a wacky and fun way. It's not music that I usually go for because it sounds forced, in my view, in most cases. Their first album that they put out was a real glorious exception to that.
We're going to hear a tune by Aisha Kandisha's Jarring Effects as we go out. Thank you very much for talking to us this evening, Richie Unterberger, down in San Francisco. The book, once again, Unknown Legends of Rock and Roll.
Thanks a lot, Richie.
Thanks for having me on.
Bye-bye.